Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Defense Technology Talks. This is your host, Rob Robinson, along with my colleague, Bob Burton from the North Carolina Defense Technology Transition Office. This is your federal opportunities, updates, and analysis. So we're going to do something a little bit different. We're not going to dive as deep into the enemy sit temp as we did the last time or last month, just because we did a pretty comprehensive overview of the threat situation in Ukraine. On the coffee call. So if you missed it, you're going to have to join Mobilize. And I'll pause there, but I'll pass it over to Bob to kind of do the intro, kind of do the overview and talk about our value proposition and why we are actually here. And then we'll give you some resources so you can do your own research. But without further ado, I'll pass it over to Bob.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, I think it's important that we do focus on the threat and that we understand the threat, because when you look at centers of gravity, they require critical capabilities that have critical requirements, that have critical vulnerabilities. So we deal in capabilities and technologies as DEFTECH, and then again we scout the technology landscape as a whole state approach to national security. We believe that none of us is as strong as all of us. So as we do our research and we look across the threat landscape, the technology landscape, we look for those technology opportunities that can enhance warfighters and warfighting commands, their capabilities to overcome current and emerging threats. And just one look around the geopolitical map, there's absolutely no shortage of threats. And we'll see where things go, but I think we've never been closer to World War III than where we are right now. So buckle up, be prepared, and stay tuned. We'll see where things go on that political landscape. But until then, we'll continue to highlight rapidly changing federal technology landscape, looking for opportunities for North Carolina to team and submit, to look for these types of technologies that have been put forth by our national leaders, our national research and development, technology and testing and evaluation for RDT&E, as these priorities in these investment areas. And we covered more of these on last week's session. So I hope you get a chance to look at those and across some of the innovation platforms across DoD and even other agencies, Department of Homeland Security. And we look for those opportunities where we can accelerate transition of your technologies in these national critical investment areas in order to enhance warfighting capability for our warfighters in the nation. As we look at 2022 as a year of convergence, the merging of distinct technologies, industries, or devices into a unified whole, we're noticing more and more convergence across different technology areas. And again, we covered that a bit more last week, and we'll cover that some more at the coffee call on Friday. So hopefully you'll join us there when the Army Applications Lab comes on and talks about some of their battlefield innovation. So we're in September right now, and we're going to hear from Army Futures Command, Army Applications Laboratory on Friday, and some of the things that they're looking for. We highlight the SBIR and the STTR processes, the U.S. SOCOM processes from CRADAs to their SBIRs that are sent out. And these go out in emails. We post them on Mobilize so that our network is well informed. And if you're not receiving these emails, you may want to sign up for the DEFTECH Mobilize community. That way you can receive all the latest updates. Follow us on LinkedIn, listen to the podcast, which you're doing now, and keep track, because we got to keep up. Everything's changing fast, and I think our nation's never been at a time of more need of innovative technologies at an affordable pace and an affordable rate in order to further warfighting capabilities. Next month, October, looking at cybersecurity, big data, information operations into November, and then December, kind of highlighting some of the work that DEFTECH's done, and more importantly, what the community's done to advance modernization priorities and investment areas for the nation. And why do we gather every week? Because we believe in relationships, the power of a community to collaborate, win, and strengthen our national security through our North Carolina innovation solutions. I'll just highlight again, the National Defense Strategy in 2022 highlights the importance of getting these technologies that we need more quickly into the hands of warfighters. Our value proposition, as stated, please take advantage of it as an outcome-based whole estate approach for national security, synchronized to position North Carolina as the front line of the future. synchronized from the national strategic level. We mentioned about the national security strategy. We've highlighted about the national critical and emerging technology areas, what that looks like from the DoD comptroller's budget, defense budget request to Congress as a part of the president's budget, modernization priorities, and then down to the actual tactical level of how these agencies use TTRs, SBIRs in order to further and advance technologies. There's a lot of opportunities out there to track. So please do note we'll show you the new SBIR website. It's kind of still under construction, but this is the SBIR planner. And as you can see, as we get into September, the DoD 2022.4, we'll highlight that in just a minute, is still open. Department of Energy. And then, of course, there's multiple other Department of Homeland Security, Health and Human Services, their research and development. And it's important to understand and synchronize your operations, business development opportunities with these ongoing SBIR windows. And DefTech does that throughout the year with our year of convergence, our monthly themes, our tide cycles. You might have seen the recent tide cycle for looking across human performance for the Army event that's coming up. We're looking to launch another tide cycle in support of JSOC medical technology interest areas so that they can, again, advance and integrate your technologies into their warfighting commands. So, of course, DefTech team always stands ready to support you. Let me go ahead and stop share here, and we'll go ahead and transition to some news from the different websites. In particular, the new SBA website. There's a lot of information on the SBA website, how to operate and work with each one of these agencies. But it's important that you're registered with the DSIP, and we'll talk a little more about that, and the Open DoD SBIR 2022.4. But before I go on, Rob, you want to make any comments on the importance of understanding the technology landscape, especially as it kind of ties to the threat, since this is a little more of a threat-based brief and discussion?
Yeah, so thinking of technology, one of the things that has always been kind of a logjam, and this is why the SBIR and the STTR process started, was because you have to be able to innovate at the pace of technology. And you hear multiple experts from DIU to the 75th Innovation Unit to Army Applications Lab to ARO, they all say the same thing. So when the SBIR process first started, there's a lot more research dollars in government than there were in small business. So they were using the SBIR process to kind of off ramp some of that technology to get the next level of innovation towards it. But now that those dollars are starting to shrink and it's reversing, the military industrial complex is focused in on national defense and actually fighting the wars. And so the government does not have the flexibility with programs of record to make the innovations that they need in a timely manner. So the SBIR and STTR process now is designed to put more innovation dollars into the hands of businesses so they can make that next evolution, whatever the next better mousetrap is. And I'll just say that as a broad perspective. But if you have a widget that is only as good as the innovation dollars that are being applied to it. So by creating the SBIR and the STTR cycles, it creates opportunities for the government to get cutting edge technology at a faster rate than it would be as a program of record. So, most small businesses can innovate at the pace of innovation, which is, however much money or time that they have to actually do the work to create the new opportunities for themselves, versus a government program of record, which takes between 3 and 5 years just to get established. And then that program of record may be around for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, depending on what it is. Like if you look at some of the aircraft or some of the weapon systems that we've had, look at the new firearms that the Army has come out with. The new firearms in the Army came out just recently, but we've had the variation of the M4 carbine or the CAR 15 since the 60s and the 70s. So here you are, in 2022, finally getting a new weapon system. Is the juice worth the squeeze? Don't know. We're waiting for feedback from soldiers, but it took a very, very long time to evolve just a projectile weapon from what we used to have to what we have today in the Army. So again, being able to forecast those technology areas that the government is looking at may also help you land that program of record. And if you're highly involved in the SBIR, STTR program, you can legitimately, one, get a good return on investment because you're creating something that the government needs. But the other part of it is you're part of national security. So there's a lot of folks that wish that they had served, and by supporting the warfighter, you're not there physically, but your technology can be. So that's a very good opportunity for you to continue to create and innovate and look at what the government is seeking to add to the fight. I'll pass it back to Bob so he can dive in a little bit more on the STTR, and SBIR program.
Yeah, and that's why we talk about, a whole of state approach, and that none of us is as strong as all of us. We need all components from academia, small business, large business, public-private partnerships, venture capitalists, that investment, to move these technologies and advance these technologies forward. But I'm sure everyone's aware this is coming out of DoD. That lawmakers on the Hill right now are proposing major changes to the structure of the DoD, SBIR, and STTR. In order to spur the innovation like Rob talked about. Even as officials from DoD and industry are sounding the alarm that the U.S. will lose ground to China in the competition over critical technologies if the program isn't reauthorized by the end of the month. Now, it is set to expire September 30th. That's about 2 weeks away. So we're definitely going to keep you posted on the status of the SBIR program. And as a seed fund, it's yielded a 22-1% or ratio value to the DoD. And we hear from every government agency that we have on or host DEFTECH webinar or in-person event, the importance of early stage innovation from the SBIR phase 1, the basic and applied sciences, through that prototype phase 2 into commercialization, extremely important commercialization of phase 3. So understanding these different phases, let DEFTECH help you navigate the dreaded valley of death. There are processes out there. We look to SOF as the early adopters, 82nd and other organizations who need these technologies today for the current fight that we're seeing in support of Ukraine against Russia's aggression there. So, and then, of course, you can go on and learn more about this, about the Small Business Administration Congressional Committee trying to avoid a lapse in the program. Why? That's real dollars that we're talking about. 121 billion in total sales, 28 billion in sales and products to the U.S. military. So absolutely important program, and we certainly cannot afford to let that lapse. We talked about this with the open cycles. DoD Ciber 2022.4 is open, basically as an annual type of a BAA. So you want to get in there, take a look at the Army, Air Force opportunities that are there. Scrolling through, there's 66 opportunities. DTT for the Defense Threat Reduction Agency. Get in there and submit. What have you got to lose? You spend a little bit of time, get your business development folks to build out the proposal based on what they're looking for. And then you can go through and do keyword searches and seek what other agencies are looking for the critical and emerging technologies that we highlight every week that you are developing. Across DARPA is a great partner, OSD, and again, more Air Force, and of course, US SOCOM. We mentioned that as the early adopters. You're going to want to tune in on Friday to the coffee call, the early session, because we're actually going to dig into Vulcan and what that looks like and how opportunities are posted only in Vulcan to include this JSOC opportunity that's coming out very, very soon. It looks like it's got a very short turn as well for their medical technology areas of interest. So make sure you tune in across all of our platforms. And Rob, back to you to kind of highlight the threat, and then we'll look at some resources we can share with our community.
All right. Thanks, Bob. Yeah. So if you missed it, last week in the coffee call, we did a fairly deep dive into Ukraine. Still ongoing hostilities, lots of things going on over there. But one of the primary discussions that we had was utilization of drones. Drones are everywhere. They're using commercial off-the-shelf drones. They're using military drones. They're importing them from other countries that want to have ill effects on the Ukrainian people because, again, for lack of a better term, this is a proxy type battle. So you have major nation state actors that are promoting support to, the people on the ground. But as you can see, Bob just highlighted and clicked on there. And so the way that the live map, so we'll talk about that first. So live map is a very, very simple. You do a quick Google search of live map Ukraine, and it will pull up the information that Bob is looking at right now. So it's a social media aggregator. So it pulls off news reports, it pulls off flash reports. And if somebody just happens to text something, it'll come up. So this is a tweet that talks about Vladimir Zelensky's looking at the liberation of 300 settlements. So if you heard in the news that the Ukrainians are launching an offensive, and that offensive is pushing back the Russians, and you can get some information from here. Now, that being said, take everything with a grain of salt unless you can double or triple verify that information, because you don't know who's posting this stuff on Facebook or Twitter. So again, it's good anecdotal information, but if you're in the uniform, you have some other technical means of getting more refined reports. But if not, this is a great way to find out information. And what I will tell you briefly is there are a large number of private military companies and just civilians that have gone over there to support the mission from all over the world to help the Ukrainians fight against the Russians. There are some folks that just say, hey, evil is evil, and I'm going to prevent people from getting hurt. But if you look on your screen, Bob just highlighted a heavy explosion that popped up, and that was 4 minutes ago. And then you can click on it. Heavy explosions in the, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce the name of that district, but there's social media posts about it. So that there's activity that's going on. So you can always click on it, see the source, and kind of dive a little bit deeper. If you're trying to explore the country, just from an informational standpoint, one of the places that you can go is the CIA fact book. So the CIA fact book is very, very interesting. So CIA fact book allows you to see, and if you look to the left, it basically kind of gives you a walkthrough of what the country's about, the geography, the people, what the government looks like, and what the economy looks like. And so you can kind of get an understanding of, how the country is operating. So it's really interesting to be able to dive into this. And this is an open resource that is doesn't require a cat card or anything else. You just go CIA fact book, and you can pull up most countries in the world, and you'll get a wave top level synopsis. One of the other documents that you can find is public releases. So all you have to do is do a Google search. You can go to the whitehouse.gov and find any releases that are associated with Ukraine. This is from the 19th of August. So this was the last big tranche of finances that came out. And you can see all the weapon systems that have been shipped over to Ukraine in support of the Ukrainian military as they're fighting against the Russians. Quite a bit of stuff here, a lot of material. But one of the things that they aren't talking about is all the commercial off-the-shelf equipment that has been landing in the hands of both the Russian and Ukrainian soldiers. And so, small unmanned aerial systems have been one of the biggest scourges out there. Again, we talked about that in depth last week on the coffee call. And the only way that you're going to get a replay of that is if you are signed up and mobilized and can jump on board and find the video there. So we would encourage you to check that out, because when we do have sensitive topics, we don't like to have a broad release of the information, just because we want to protect as many people as possible, those that are on the call, plus the sources of the information that we receive. So again, lots of information about Ukraine. So if it's of interest to you, you can start looking at this. All this stuff is readily available. All you have to do is, type in Google and you can find it. But again, there's a lot of equipment out there, and this thing isn't going away. It may slow down in November or December, because Russian winters are Russian winters. It's going to be cold and brutal out there, and that may be one of the things that significantly changes the outcome of the battle. It may pause for a while, or it may go further, or people may retreat to warm ports or warm places to protect themselves from the harsh weather in the Russian winter. I mean, even Napoleon fought in the Russian winter, and that wasn't a good idea, and Stalin did it too. So, I mean, those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it, but like, you're having history being made in real time in front of you. And unlike any other wars that we've had, one, we're not physically involved as much as we were in the global war on terrorism. However, the amount of information that is coming out that is basically unfiltered is pretty significant. But I will pause there and pass it back over to Bob, and just remind everybody one more time, jump into the DefTech community. We'll put all the links for you to register in the podcast description, so you can get onto the Mobilize platform and see all of the replays and many of the other engagements that we've had in Mobilize. But I'll pass it back to Bob.
All right. Thanks, Rob. Yeah, as we do this analysis, we think it's important to create what we call artifacts, and those are those resources, the video recordings, now what you're listening to now, the podcast, and also the connection of our community, which again is pushing almost 500 people. You want to get into the DefTech community, like Rob said. Sign up for the community lounge. This is how you sign up for our opportunities that we send out. It's how you learn about the podcast across our value proposition, which we highlight at the beginning of each one of these ops updates because it is so vast. And we're doing all of this with 3 people and a strategic consultant that helps us out. And kind of as we put together our annual report for this year, we really are looking for more good news stories about our companies, not so much about what we're doing, but about what you're doing. And North Carolina is winning. As we look across the SBIR websites, those wins, we're putting out news releases. And we would love to help position your company, come alongside you to be successful, to submit for all these opportunities that we're talking about, and then to better understand these government agencies so that you can find common ground between different agencies and then submit again and again and again. And that win is in the submit. So you've got to submit in order to win. So take advantage of the DefTech community. Please do note the cultural norms and guidelines are welcome. This is a place for you to post. It's a closed community, like Rob said. We take your privacy and your security extraordinarily serious, especially based upon our backgrounds. We're both retired out of the Army with a lot of experience, a lot of combat experience. And we want to protect you while getting the information out, sharing ideas and news that we're seeing and resources to help you learn. Because we believe in teaching people how to fish rather than feed that fish. Give them a fish, you feed them for a day, or you help people win for a lifetime. And that's what it's about. So that's why we're here every week. Take advantage of our full value proposition. If you're going to join us on Thursday for the event that we're going to have for understanding innovation, that's going to be a really good discussion. Defense innovation, a historical perspective, and that's going to be at our partners over at the First Flight Venture Center, where we're going to hear from Lieutenant General retired Daniel Bolger. He's a warfighter and a historian, and we're going to learn about those historical perspectives. So please take advantage of all the activities we have going on to network, to connect, and to learn, because the landscape's changing fast, technology's changing fast, and we've got to stay on board, work together as a whole state approach for national security. So I'll kind of wrap up my portion here, and Rob, if you can bring us to the end, and we'll get this posted for the community to take advantage of. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again, Bob, for your comments and your insights. Again, we do this, and sometimes it feels like we're talking to the wall, and other times it feels like we're getting responsiveness. And I can tell you it's getting responsiveness because we have a lot of people listening to the podcast, and we appreciate that. And we're going to continue to do these because, one, it's about creating those artifacts that are helpful. But the other part of it is it really shows you what North Carolina is doing. As a community of interest, we are leading the charge in more than one way. So it's not just a podcast, it's not just videos, it's not just Mobilize. It's the opportunities that we collect and present to our community that give them the best opportunity to succeed. We also have people from outside of the state of North Carolina that come in. They see all of the capabilities that we have in the coffee call and in our community, and they want to stay and hang out. And that's the biggest compliment that we can get, other than saying, hey, look, we heard about this from DefTech and we won. You coming back to sit with us and listen to our commentary or have a better understanding of the problem set is just as important as you winning. And we appreciate all of you guys that are out there that are listening to this and are sharing it with your friends, coworkers, and family. I hope not your family, but if your family's in the technology business, please share with them. But other than that, I'm your host, Rob Robinson, and with my colleague, Bob Burton from the North Carolina Defense Technology Transition Office, or DefTech. And this has been this week's Defense Technology Talks. We will talk to you guys next week. Thanks.